Hello and welcome to another payment integration video. We're continuing the series of Adyen integrations over here, and this time we're gonna show you how to do the advanced flow integration with the Adyen gateway. I'm referring to this one in particular over here, the one right in front of you. So this is slightly different than the ones we've done before. Let me show you the user experience to show you what I mean. This will be the end result. This over here is my page, and this form over here is the Adyen card form. It looks almost exactly like the form that we worked on in the simple sessions integration video. You just enter the card number and then the expiry, RT code, you hit pay, and then you get the payment result. This is what's happening here in this case. In the app, you send an API request that requests the payment methods available for the payer, depending on your merchant profiles at Adyen. That goes to your server sends it to Adyen. Adyen returns that to you in the form of a JSON array. It looks like this. So this is your request, and you get this response back. Then you take that and you plug it in their JavaScript library to render the form that I just showed you just now. And you do that in this step, encrypted card, and you do this in this step here, payment methods return, and you use this library. It's the same package from the previous video. And you plug your payment information here in a parameter called payment methods response. You get it straight from your server and you put it here. And then you follow the steps over here, which we will do in the video. You'll perform the payment. Now the difference happens here. This step, encrypted card information, or if you refer to the guide here, step 5. In the simple session flow, the JavaScript library just performed the payment right away and handle any event that occurs as a result of that, like for example 3DS integration. Advanced gives you your encrypted payment information back like this, and then it lets you perform additional steps before you could do your payments. So this is the advantage behind this method. You could send it straight to your server to perform the payment, or you could do some steps in between. Back to the diagram, you get the encrypted card information from the JavaScript library after the user into their card information hit pay, and then you send those encrypted card information to your server, and then you send a payment request to your server, payment request to Adyen from your server. The payment gets authorized here, authorization request, authorization response. The response is returned. Then you return the response back to your app, and you can handle it then accordingly. In the way I did it, I redirected the customer to the result page showing them that their payment was authorized like this. And you will also get a webhook from Adyen with the full payment information once you perform this, once the payment is done. So the payment request looks like this. Just a regular payment request, but with the payment information encrypted. Encrypted information will look like this, long strings. And the response will look like this. This is the response in case the payment requires a redirection. But if it's a regular card payment, you'll just get authorized as a response. In my example, I redirect the user to a result page, and I put query parameters in the URL for the result page that says this is authorized, and this is the payment reference. This is the end result that we're trying to achieve here, and I'm going to show you how to code it. It's going to be pretty straightforward. Starting with a new checkout page template from the start, we're going to go ahead and build this integration. Starting first with getting our credentials, which is the first step in this guide and every guide here. And you do that by going to your Adyen test account, and over here on the left you go to developers. Then you go to API credentials, and then you go to WS, and there you'll see your credentials in this page. This is your server API key, which you can use for your API calls, and this is your client key, which you're going to use for your client JavaScript libraries. So the first step over here is the get available payment methods API call. This is what it looks like. That's already set up here in Postman. You send the request, you put your currency and amount, and this is the response you get. It's just a an array with the payment method supported by your merchant ID on Adyen. So this is the first step. Now let's go ahead and implement that in a endpoint and deploy it and use it in our app. Okay, so I'm going to be coding my get payment methods endpoint from here, and to do that, let's just go ahead and grab that API request from Postman like this. You just go to Postman. On the right side here, you'll see a code symbol. Click on it, and then here you'll find a symbol, a code sample for Axios. Just use that in your code, and you'll be set. Alright, let's test our implementation. Perfect, it's working. So what I did here is that I'm taking in the amount from the request payload. I'm taking it as a regular number, like 23 Saudi Riyal. I did this because Adyen expects the amount it expects you to give the amount in cents, or whatever the cent equivalent for the currency you're working with. So in Saudi Riyal, that would be halala. Like, they would expect you to input 23 Saudi Riyal as this instead of this. So to deal with that, I just added a logic here in the amount that converts it from regular dollars to cents, which is the format that Adyen accepts in its API. And then I put it here along with the currency, then I send the request, and then the data that I get from from the Adyen server, I pass it back to the front end. And I hard-coded my API code here. You shouldn't do that. You should use something like a secret manager or environment variables when you do your actual implementation. This is the bad practice right here, so heads up on that. Anyways, so my implementation is working for the get payment method API call. I'm going to go ahead and deploy it and use it in my client side. Alright, so my endpoint got deployed to cloud, and this is the link right here. And before I go ahead and implement it in my client side, I want to test it in production first. So I'm just going to do the same thing over here in Postman, and I'm going to put the real URL here in the request and send it. See if it works. It works. It gives me the response that I expect. Now I'm going to go ahead and implement it in the client side, and that would be our step 1. Moving to step 2. Alright, now we're on to step 2 over here. As the Adyen guide calls it, step 3, add components to your payments form. So you need to go ahead and install this library in your ReactJS project. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and set up the and add the libraries to my project. And I'm going to go ahead and follow this coding in my checkout page template. So watch this. So after you install the library, your React project might start acting up like this. If it does that, you just go ahead and rerun your project. So kill the node instance and then reinitiate it like this, and just refresh, and it should be fine now. Now we need to add a component right under the total here that's going to contain all the front end work for the Adyen checkout library. So here in my page, I have the total in this component, which is called checkout page. This is the total text, and I'm gonna put my payment form right under it here in a component called, let's call it Adyen Advanced. I'm gonna go ahead and code this component. Now over here in the configure the component sample, you're gonna see a big chunk of code over here. I'm gonna simplify it for you. But first, before we start coding this, you need to create a useEffect method inside this component that will call the API that gets the payment method, and then create this configuration object over here, and then plug it into the library, as you can see here in the next steps. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so once I grab my payment methods object from this API call, I gotta plug it in my configuration object from hidden here. So when you copy it, you might get some formatting errors, so you gotta clean it up a little bit for it to work. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, so here you're supposed to make your API call that's gonna use encrypted information to do the payment, but I don't have that yet. So for now, I'm just gonna show you what this JavaScript library print out when the payment when the user enter the card information, hit submit. And because I don't have that yet, I'm gonna comment out all this code that uses the response, so that I can move on my coding for now. Okay, the configuration object's created. Now let's go ahead and mount the payment form. Go back to the guide. So under this you'll find the steps on how to do that. Copy, paste. Again, just take that, paste. Component container, that's what it's called right here, component container. And then let's go ahead and call this method and see if the form will mount. There you go, it's working. So this is the payment form, and this is what happens when you enter your card information and hit submit. Check this out over here. Let's remove this so you can see. This is the payment methods that are supported by this merchant ID, and this is what's returned from that API request that we made earlier. So that's what that's for. Now we enter the card information, we hit pay, and then what's gonna happen is that instead of paying, what this thing will do is that it will encrypt the payment information, and then it'll return it to you here, as you can see in the console. Now this is what you gotta send to your server to complete the payment on your server side. But this is how to implement the client side. And now we're gonna go ahead to step 3 or 2, I don't know, where we're gonna build the payment API and do an end-to-end payment. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we completed up until this step over here. We need to go ahead and work on this step number 4, make the payment. And this is what the API call for it looks like. I have this also set up in my Postman collection. It looks like this. And if you don't have the data from the client side that I showed you earlier, you could just test using the test card, just prefix them with test underscore. This is the same credentials that I used to demonstrate how the form works on the client side. You just hit send, and you should expect a response that looks like this. Authorized. Now we're gonna go ahead and implement this on the server endpoint side, on the server side, and this is my code. This is where I'm going to code it here. So let's go ahead and code it. Okay, so I got almost everything here in the code. I gotta explain a couple of things here. The first thing is that you need to grab the payment method object from your client side as it is. Now you get this from the data returned in your state. Where is it? Here on create form, in configuration, on submit, state, inside data, inside a attribute called payment method. Now this over here, payment method, you need to pass it to your server, which will go here in the request, goes here, and then goes into the request as it is. Because as you can see here in the guide, it's asking for this detail, and this detail are all in this object payment method. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. So just take this as it is and send it to your server, and your server will use it to send the payment. So that's the first thing. The second thing we gotta clarify is the I'm in the dark over here is the let me put some lights on. A little bit better. Okay, sorry. Is the reference for your order or your order ID. Now your order ID, you need to generate that randomly or use whatever logic you prefer to generate your order. What I like to do is to ask ChatGPT to give me a method that creates a random alpha numerical string given a length integer. JavaScript. Go ahead, copy that, go back to your code, put that there, generate a random string. I'll make it 8 digits long, and that's it, and that's that. Okay, so before we test this, the last thing I gotta add is the endpoint, of course. Not this one, this one, or in the guide, this will be the endpoint. Just take that, put it here, and now let's go ahead and test this, see if it's creating the right, if I built it correctly or if I messed up something. Okay, go ahead and send this. Oops, my bad. Oh, my bad. I forgot to add my merchant account ID, this parameter. So I'm gonna go back here, add it, and let's go ahead and try again, see if it works, see if I fixed it. There you go. That was the thing that I missed. I forgot to add my merchant ID. But now that I added it, this thing works. Now I'm gonna go ahead and deploy this endpoint in production and implement it in my client side. Okay, I got my endpoint for the payment, and I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video, as in implement it and then create the redirection to the result page to show the user that the payment is successful. So let's do that. So here inside on submit, I'm just gonna directly code the the API call. So let's go ahead and just do that. Here, under payment method, you take this state.data.payment method and put it here, and then let's keep coding. Now we can uncomment the code that was sitting here and just do let result equal payment response data, and this will handle whatever the response that comes from the server. And but before I do the end-to-end testing, I want to create the redirection to the merchant page, to the result page now. So here on failure, I'll just do alert payment failed. Or I don't have to do this here actually. Well, I'll just do this here, but also do it here just for good measure. Same thing here, and here is I'm gonna do the redirection. And for the redirection, I'll just say if payment complete, then just do window location, and then my destination where I'm gonna be redirecting, and the parameters. I need my, here I'm gonna need my status, which I'm gonna get from the response here, actually from the result. This will be result code plus reference. This is the order ID that the cardholder can use to reference their order with the merchant in case they need a refund or something or have an issue with it. This will be merchant reference, which we will get from the payment response as well. Here on payment response, from here, this will be result merchant reference, simple enough. And this is, let's just make it a variable here in the beginning of the function. So the redirection happens. Let's try again. You do the payment, you get redirected, your params are here. All right, now I just need to do that little message that goes over here. Here in the result page, all you gotta do is get your params like this. There you go. And that's it. I can just add this so that the order number is more obvious. And that's it. That's how we do it. Now let's do one more end-to-end testing. You get the form, you enter your test card number. You hit pay, send it to the server encrypted, and then the server responds, and then we send the response back to the JavaScript library. We then redirect to our result page and put our parameters in the result page, and there you go. This is the result page, and this is how to implement Adyen's advanced integration. You will also get a webhook if you have set it up. If you have set up your webhook, you'll also get a webhook with the full response for the payment with all the other details. Check my previous video on the simple session at the end. I show you how to set up those webhooks so you can receive them in your server. But that's all for now. It's actually pretty straightforward. Hope the video was useful. If you found it useful and helpful, press like, subscribe, and if you have any questions, leave it in the comment. If you want the full source code for this video so you can just so you don't have to code this thing from the scratch. You can check my Patreon link below in the description box. Otherwise, you could totally just code the whole thing by yourself following the video. Anyways, that's all for today. We'll see you next time. Bye bye.